Hey everybody, this is Barney Quincy, and I am coming at you live from Milverton, Ontario. And I am at our local library here, and the internet was much faster here today than it was at home. So I thought I'd come and make good use of our wonderful library. But I'm so glad that you guys are here. Just do us a huge favor and let us know by dropping a comment down below where you're tuning in from live today. Because what I'm really excited about to share with you today is we have one of our super brilliant and educated presenters, Dr. Erin O'Connor from Naperville, Illinois. She might correct me if she lives somewhere else or is from somewhere else. But I'm going to bring her on the screen here in a second. And first, I want to let you know, for those of you who had heard about our AWS Live or our first live event, I sent out an email to all the people, a handful of them that purchased their tickets. There was so much excitement that was going on with when Young Living, for those of you who are in Young Living and know that the animal conference that was scheduled had gotten canceled. And we had been thinking about doing a live event for the last year because we had people ask, saying, hey, this summit's really cool and awesome, but like, let's have a live event. And so we had over 160 people on the wait list. And then there was 2 or 3 other events that got announced right around the same time as ours. And I thought, you know what, we're just going to do this. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be awesome. But then after we realized that, you know, maybe it's just too short notice. And some people, believe it or not, they're like, I don't know, Canada seems pretty cool, but I don't know if I don't have my passport. So there's been all this stuff that's happened. We decided to postpone the event until May 9th and 10th, 2020. So if you're a long-term planner and you want to mark those dates down, I already paid for the venue. So that those dates are marked in stone. And I'm sharing this with you because Dr. Erin was going to be one of our presenters. I was really excited to be able to meet her because I haven't been able to meet her in person yet. And so I just thought to give you a quick little update on that because I had some people ask like, hey, what's going on with the event? So just know that it's being postponed until 2020 and May 9th and 10th, 2020, okay? So I'm gonna bring in Dr. Erin. She is on the screen. And welcome, Dr. Erin.
Hi, Barney.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Yeah. Well, thanks for taking the time to be here because I know that you're not sitting there twiddling your thumbs looking for something to do. I know that you're a very busy animal chiropractor and passionate about so many things that have so much value in the animal world. What I'd love for you to do is just give a brief kind of overview because I think most people, I'm going to presume, kind of know who you are, but there might be some people that are like, I have no idea, who that bald-headed guy is from Canada on there, but I don't know who this girl is that's on the screen. So could you just kind of give us a brief summary about, kind of who you are and what you do, because it's pretty expansive.
Yeah. So my name is Dr. Erin O'Connor. I'm actually currently living in Aurora, Illinois, which is right next to Naperville. So you were close, Barney. I'll give it to you since you're from Canada.
Well, that's pretty good then.
So it's about 40 minutes from Chicago is where I'm at, 40 minutes west. I'm an animal chiropractor. I've been doing animal chiropractic for close to 10 years now. Small animals, exotics, wildlife. I leave all the large animals to my associate doctor. She goes out to barns to adjust horses and cows and other farm animals. And I also do carnivore nutrition. So raw feeding basically for dogs, cats, and ferrets. So those are my 2 focuses, animal chiropractic care and raw feeding. Animal chiropractic care, of course, I do that in my office. It has to be in person, but raw feeding, I do nutrition consults online. So I can work with anybody from anywhere for that. And I also recently, for the Chicagoland area, started up my own raw food company with a local farmer. So that's been fun. We launched about 3 months ago and people are just loving it. So trying to make raw feeding just easier to understand, easy to implement. And at least for the Chicagoland area, now they have a really easy way to just pick up and have a set container ready to go to feed to their dogs. So that's what I'm doing.
Well, that's pretty cool. And I put your, for those of you wondering, because if I don't do this, we get bombarded in our support desk after through emails saying, hey, what was that presenter's website or their phone number? So just so you know, you can go and find out more about Dr. Erin and everything that she does on her website. It's great because I asked her which website, because she has a couple different websites that she wanted me to share. And I said, she asked me to put the Dr. Erin O'Connor, because it's like a little nice little site to be able to see, like a landing spot for you to go and see all the different work that she does. So go and check out her website. And so that's pretty neat with the raw feeding. Of course, that's something that's like a local solution. So
Yeah.
there's people that don't, that are not local, obviously, but
Right.
that are interested in that. But I mean, is there something that, like, some tips that you have for them, that if they're wanting to get started or are feeding raw, but they're having a trouble kind of sourcing some good ingredients, what are some tips that you have for them?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I started up my raw food company, Farm to Bowl, is because people weren't wanting to go through all the work of finding a butcher or finding a farmer or a hunter, you name it, and sourcing from all different places for their dogs, cats, or ferrets. So I thought it had been in the back of my mind for a while. I just really didn't have a chance to really implement and take action on it yet. But what I've done is I've teamed up with a local farmer so that everything is set to go in the right proportion, so that dog owners could just scoop it and put it into a bowl. So if you're looking for something in your area, I would probably reach out to other raw feeders and see kind of what they're doing if there's a local company in your area, because you will typically save money if you are going directly from a farmer or directly from, say, a butcher or a hunter, rather than doing like a commercial raw food. So that's kind of what we've done. We've eliminated the middleman so that we can have a convenient food for a less expensive than what you would pay for a pet store. So there are several companies around the whole US. I don't know about Canada, unfortunately, but there are several companies around the US that do the same thing that I do. So I would try and seek those companies out, and it's super fresh that way as well, because it's coming right from the farm. So it's been really fun getting that started up here for the Chicagoland area. But yeah, there are definitely other companies around that do the same thing. Okay,
cool. So find the raw food suppliers in your area and just start networking and building.
Yep. Yeah, building that's connections. What you have to
do. Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty simple, but again, yeah. Well, and I mean, as silly as it sounds, I'm sure you hear this in your practice too, that it's not that people don't always necessarily know what to do, but there can be multiple things, and then it seems so simple, the solution. And so do you find, for people that are wanting to feed raw, what are your thoughts on, because this is a question that actually has come up before in the summit, like the raw feeding presentations like yours, is what are your thoughts if somebody can't get it like super like raw and very fresh? Is it the next step is to get it like that it's flash frozen, or what are your thoughts on that?
So raw feeding, of course, would be the best. It's the least processed. It's super fresh. It's in the form that their body readily recognizes and utilizes. So it's going to create a healthy animal. If you don't have access to fresh raw food, next up would be like a freeze-dried raw. So of course, with that, you're going to pay for the convenience of not having to put it in a freezer and all of that. So it will be a little bit more expensive. But if you don't have the freezer space and you don't want to deal with raw food, freeze-dried food would be your next best option. So that's what I would look into next. I'm not a big fan of canned and kibble because it is processed. So even if you're feeding the best of the best kibble or canned food, it still is a processed food. So it would be like us looking around and going, okay, McDonald's, Wendy's, Burger King, Taco Bell, which is the best of the worst? Right. So in the end, it still is processed. So I have some people coming in and they go, well, I feed this food and it's this much money and it says organic and holistic and all of this on the bag. But it's food in a pelleted form, which, I mean, nothing in nature comes in a pellet form. It comes in a bag with a never-ending shelf life. So every type of fresh food that you have, it should eventually go bad. Kibble, it takes a really long time for that to happen. So that should be a red flag to you as well. So it's really, I've kind of steered clear out of the processed food world for probably, I think I just kind of put it out there maybe 6 or 7 years ago saying, I've removed myself from this world. I do not make any recommendations for this world. I do everything raw feeding. So if you have questions for raw feeding, talk to me. If you don't, then there's always a pet store that's willing to talk to you about the processed food. Just because I feel that it's a disservice for me to say, okay, this kibble is the best of the worst kibbles. In the end, it's still, you're feeding a processed food. So.
Yeah. And I think that I agree with you 100%, especially from, I mean, you have, as I've said before, I'm not the animal wellness expert. I'm the expert in bringing people together like you that have something to share with people who care, who are all the people who are on the call and going to watch the replay.
Yeah.
But from my humble holistic health background and history within the human world for 15 years is that we use this term called the rainbow bridge, where some people, if it's like they can't make that transition, that it's good to identify that if they are on the kibble. And I know that that's what you're saying is good to empower people to get to that point. And then it's like the good, better, best kind of thing, right?
Yep. And a lot of people do want kind of those stepping stones to getting there. But I do also have people coming to me with dogs with pretty severe health issues going on. So a lot of times taking those stepping stones out, you're going to get the quicker results in health. So, but if you need stepping stones, if that's going to be your way of getting to a better food, by all means, definitely do that. Because if you're working a little bit less processed and a little bit less processed, then your dog and cat are still going to benefit from that. So yeah, definitely working towards better food. So a lot of people though, if they're coming with a lot of like allergy issues and things like that, we'll typically just have them do like a 24-hour fast and then go right to raw. And usually, I mean, you're going to have a healthier animal faster. So, but I understand the stepping stones. I thought the same way back when I was getting into raw feeding as well. So yeah, it tends to be a common process of thinking.
Yeah. And I think that I'm asking on behalf of the people who are going to watch this in the future as a replay and, or that are like, okay, I keep hearing about this. I know I need to get there, but there's that perception of all of the challenges and the work and the, all that stuff. But just for those of you who are Canadian, like Jane Book, who's one of our other fellow presenters, said in Canada or Ontario, she uses Big Country Raw. And that is, I remember my sister that she feeds her dogs raw as well. And that's another company that provides that. I think it's frozen or flash frozen. I think, but I might be mistaken. But anyways, for those of you in Canada looking, that's a company if you're in Ontario. Now, Kevin asked this question, and then a couple people already answered it up above, but just for the benefit of you being the great presenter, can you share this? I think this is, I know Kevin's asking from the perspective, like just to have a good explanation on it.
Yeah, a lot of people too, even clients in my office, I'll talk about raw food and they go, okay, so how do I cook that? I go, you don't have to, it's raw.
Right, it's already cooked.
Yeah, and really the pet food industry has really put so much information out there that when we hear raw food, it's like, whoa, raw food can't possibly be raw. It must be cooked in some form. And it's not. So raw food, it's getting as close as we can to what the wild relatives of our dogs and cats would eat. So it's not cooked at all. You don't especially want to cook bone because if you cook bone, you could have some pretty adverse effects from that because cooked bone can splinter and actually harm your pet. So you do not want to do that. So yeah, raw food is uncooked in its raw form. And it is muscle meat, about 80% muscle meat, 10% bone, and 10% organ. There are some people that also will include fruits and vegetables and things like that. I stick with pre-model raw, which is just the animal ingredients. So, and if you watched my presentations, I explain why I do what I do and why I have that philosophy. But yeah, raw food is exactly that, just raw food. No need to cook or prepare or anything like that, unless you're getting things from different sources and you need to make sure that you have your bone and you have your meat and you have your organ all in your bags or containers. But that's really the only preparation you have to do for it. So
right. Okay. No, that's good. And Angela commented there for Kevin as well before we got to have you answer, just saying that's uncooked and very minimally processed.
Yeah, and that's the other reason too of why to keep it raw and not to cook, because if you cook the food, then it's going to kill off some of those live nutrients. So your dog still will get benefits from cooked food over, say, something like canned or kibble, but you're missing out on some of those live nutrients that you would get in the raw form. So
right.
It's definitely, there's more advantages to raw feeding over cooked feeding.
Yeah, and this is Dr. Christina Chambreau. Hello, Dr. Christina, who's going to be another presenter at the AWS Live, but not until next year, May 9th and 10th. Hopefully you're still in. So she just commented here, like including your pets in your grocery shopping. What are you, I know that every presenter, and this is what I love about it, and I want to kind of put this out there, that we have like some presenters who agree on some things, some people have difference of opinions. So I'm curious your thoughts on this. Do you suggest that your clients who, if they can't find a good butcher or, a hunter locally, is that like a good place for some? I mean, I feel like it's a silly question as I'm asking you this, but is it something that you encourage them to do this too, to go to the grocery store when you're to fit them in?
Yeah, they can definitely do that. I was looking for the comment, so I wasn't sure what she was asking. So yeah, you're saying that if they don't have access, go to the grocery store. Yeah, that's fine.
I maybe should read it for the recording, because I thought for whatever reason you could see it on the screen, but maybe not. So Dr. Christina just said, I like to have you include your pets in your grocery shopping, buy raw chicken, beef, venison, turkey, meat bones, and organ meats, whatever you were eating that week, so that it gives lots of variety.
Yeah, variety is definitely key. I have bought food from the grocery store for my own dogs, especially if I see like whole ducks on sale or something like that. My German Shepherd is all about that. Yeah, you could definitely purchase good quality sourced meats from the grocery store. Of course, if you have access to a farmer or butcher, it's going to be a little bit more high quality than from the grocery store. But yeah, you could certainly do that. They typically will have like beef liver, chicken liver, sometimes even lamb, and they usually at least have the meat form of a bunch of different proteins to include some variety. So
right. Okay. Now this, I think you already answered it, but maybe Marty was asking, and then what percentage of bone, organ, muscle meat do you feed? I know you already answered it, but just for the future, why don't you just restate that again?
Yeah, so I do premodel raw. So that's about 80% muscle meat, 10% organ, 10% bone. So you try and get as close as you can to the animal itself, so that you're getting as close to what they would find naturally if they were out to go hunt their own food, like like a wolf or a fox or whatever. So So 8, 10, 10.
Cool. And Dr. Christina commented on this again. I've seen you do this, or saw, I don't know, this is every time I say I've seen this or I saw this, my wife always corrects me, and then I second guess myself what I'm supposed to say. English was not my major. Business and math is. Okay.
We're not going to be grammar trolls around here.
Okay, good. That's good. I wouldn't get along well with them. So she's saying that I like to remind people to feed big chunks so dogs and cats can exercise their teeth and jaws. And I see, because we are friends on Facebook, and I see some of your posts with your dog. So tell us a little bit more about that, because I know that, like, I see you brought like, it was like a big turkey leg, or was it maybe a venison? I don't know, something, but I was like, wow, that's a big piece, and the dog was like having a heyday.
I'm guessing if it was a really big piece, it probably was from a deer, because usually in the fall I'm collecting deer parts from hunters, and there's one hunting group that actually gives me everything after they trim off all of their own meat. So it comes in the entire deer, and then I portion it out. So raw meaty bones are definitely great to include in your dog or cat's diet. They're going to get even more additional benefits than if you were to just do ground raw food. So what happens is, if you feed raw meaty bones, they're going to get physical stimulation, they're going to get mental stimulation, And it also almost acts like nature's toothbrush to help clear off tartar and things off their teeth. I actually pet sat for a good friend of mine, and it was a Shiba Inu, and his teeth were just covered in tartar. And I go, will you let me just feed your dog some raw meaty bones while he's staying with me for the couple of weeks? And he goes, oh, sure. By the time he came back from his trip, his dog actually had really nice, clean white teeth. And he goes, what on earth did you do? And I go, well, I fed him raw meaty bones every day, and he worked it off little by little. So yeah, it can make a big difference in the oral health of your dog or cat. And also with my German Shepherd, he's going to be 3 this summer. He was naturally reared, so all he knows is raw food. He doesn't even know that kibble and canned food exists out there.
Right.
So with him, people told me, oh, you're getting a German Shepherd. They're going to chew up everything. They're going to shred any beds that you try and give them. I had a soft crate for him. They go, oh, don't do a soft crate. He's going to chew right through that and just shred it up. I believe since he was getting raw meaty bones at least a few times a week, that gave him all that stimulation that a puppy is looking for through his food. And he actually did not even nibble on anything in my house. So not even like trim or furniture legs or things like that. He left it all alone. And it never looked like he was itching to do any of that either. So I think since I provided him that mental and physical stimulation, that really helped in the long run through his puppy years, that he didn't need to gnaw on that stuff. So, because he was already.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if they've ever done a study on that, because I see that on other pages or other groups, or that people are frustrated and complaining that their dogs are chewing things. And as you were talking, what it was coming to me was thinking about how people go a little cuckoo maybe sometimes in the wintertime in Canada. Maybe this happens in Illinois. But this winter was an interesting one for us in Ontario, because it was like we didn't get a lot of snow, and it was just kind of like crappy enough outside that it was like hard to go for walks sometimes because of the ice and the snow and all this. And then they get like cabin fever, where when people don't get enough exercise, then it starts to cause a lot of other issues when it comes to anxiety, depression, fungal and bacteria, parasite infect, all these things. Yeah. But when people just get regular movement and exercise, I mean, there's other things too, but as you were talking, that's what got me thinking about that yeah, that's if they're not, they have that like urge to like do something to try and clean their teeth. And yeah, that's interesting.
It comes naturally to them. So sometimes we have to think about it that way too, is a natural behavior of one of our pets. If they're not allowed to do that, they're going to seek out other ways to try and satisfy that inborn need to do that. So it might be chewing your chair leg.
So if you want to have your furniture chewed, feed them kibble. But if you want to have that saved, then feed them raw. Okay, no, don't do that. But, so Kevin was asking, so it's really important to get good quality source food, like source food to not have parasites. Like you want to make sure you're getting good. I mean, I think that's an obvious one, but I mean, he hits a good point that you don't want to just go get like the bottom of the barrel raw food. Right.
Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that you're using common sense with raw feeding. If it smells weird, looks weird, don't feed it. I mean, for someone like me, well, I know most of what my dogs are eating are straight from the farm that I've teamed up with to make my own raw food. But I also am collecting things from hunters. So I have to kind of inspect through that food and see, okay, does this look good? Does it not? Does it smell weird? Of course, I would toss anything like that. I wouldn't chance it for my dogs. But yeah, if you're going through, especially like a butcher or a grocer or someone like that, they're usually using human standards for, though they should be.
They should be.
The grocery store.
That's right.
They should be doing that. If they're using human standards, the chances that you would have parasites in your raw food is extremely low. For example, the farm that I provide my own food from, They use USDA standards. They have all different protocol in place so that there's proper temperature control, proper microbial control, all of that. So as long as you're sourcing through a quality place, you shouldn't have to worry about parasites.
Yeah, and such a great question, because I think that that if it's not, it can be like, well, the intention's there. You start feeding raw, the source, you think it's good, it looks good, but if you don't know what to look for, then that's important. And that is key. So for those of you like Sarah, Kevin, a couple others that I think Angela, that are VIP or platinum members, you guys have access to Dr. Erin's training still in your members area, or if you bought the digital downloads or the presentation. But you mentioned this before, and Dr. Erin, because one of your presentations, one that we're talking about, is explaining this more in depth. Is the whole like quality and all the other elements that you covered in that. Yeah. So that's good. So I just want to encourage those of you to go back and listen to Dr. Erin's presentation.
Actually, 2017 would have covered all the basics of raw feeding, and then the 2018 presentation is just kind of amping up your knowledge a little bit on raw feeding and things to include if you're looking for different benefits for your dog, or cat.
That's cool. Yeah, that's cool. So for those of you who are members and you have access to the app, you can just search Dr. Erin in the app, or you can go in the members area, and at the very top in your members area, you just type in Dr. Erin or put her O'Connor, and you can find all her presentations in it, which is really cool. So Tamara is asking, if a cat is on kibble, would that cause an adult cat to be peeing in the sink or the bathtub or on a plastic bag? That's an interesting one.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. For some reason, I'm not seeing the questions as they pop up. I'm still on Kevin's question on the middle of the screen, so I don't know if I'm supposed to see that or not. Yeah, so if your cat is having issues with that, it could be related to the food because kibble is chronically dehydrating over time. So that's why a lot of cats at the end of their years pass away from kidney disease, because they're eating a chronically dehydrating diet throughout 10, 15, 20 years of their life. So you can imagine that takes a toll on the kidneys. So certainly if your cat is eating a kibble diet and they're having issues urinary wise that you're noticing, it could be related to the food. The other thing is, since I'm an animal chiropractor, I get a lot of cats coming in for issues like this, where they're not going in the box anymore. They're using different areas to go potty. And a lot of times that's because they have either a pelvic issue or a sacral issue in their rear end. So they're not able to properly get into their box anymore. And cats will find a way around that, because maybe it hurts to get into their litter box. So it might be easier for them to just use the sink. So a lot of times getting your cat to an animal chiropractor and getting them checked out to make sure that's all clear in their rear end between their pelvis and their sacrum can help out with that. And that is probably one of the more common issues that I see cats for coming in with. Is they're not using their box anymore, which tends to be a big pain to the pet owner, and they want to act on that fast.
Right. No, that's good. I think I did feel like that was kind of a two-pronged question.
Yeah, I was going, this is a really good question because it covers both sides.
Yeah, it was great. So good on you, Tamara. That was a great question. Gail's asking, do you add any supplements when you feed raw? I live in the city, and the only organ meat I can get is kidney or liver.
I don't add a whole lot of supplementation. So my mindset is a supplement is exactly that. It should be supplementing what's in the bowl. What's in your dog's bowl should have the bulk of the nutrients that they need. Now, if you can't source everything you need to include variety, then it probably would be good to add in like a multivitamin mineral type supplement to make sure that they're getting all of that, because through the variety, that's how you achieve nutrient balance. So if you're only stuck feeding one certain type of organ meat, then I would do that. So I don't supplement too much. Sometimes I'll put some fish oil and things like that in my dog's food, high quality sourced fish oil, of course, because a lot of the pollution in our ocean comes through fish product. So you want to be sure quality sourcing on that. That's probably the most common thing that I'll put into my dog's food, just because a lot of times, just from what we've done to the environment, our soils are depleted, so then whatever the vegetation that the animals are eating is depleted in nutrients. So then the animal in the long run, a lot of times has a little bit of depletion in nutrients. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so typically I will put some omega-3s in. Sometimes I'll do some probiotics and enzymes, things like that. I have a dog that's going to be 13 next week. So just to help her immune system function, I typically will do some turkey tail. Turkey tail is not turkey, it's a mushroom if you're not familiar with it, but it supports immunity. Sometimes when I say turkey tail, people think it's actual turkey tail.
Like, what kind of turkeys do you have in Chicago?
So I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
But really, it depends on your dog or cat specific needs. So say your dog or cat is having kidney issues, then you would want to supplement something specific to the kidneys. The internet is really good at telling you your dog needs this and your cat needs that, and you should do this, and it's from the Himalayas. And
yeah.
And I mean, it doesn't need to be that complicated. So typically you get all the nutrients that you need if you're including variety in your raw food. So that's with protein rotation. But again, if you can't do that, then I would supplement some sort of multivitamin or multivitamin and mineral type supplement.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. And that is good because Dr. Christina was answering some questions for people there as well, which is good.
Just on the ball over there.
Yeah, which is awesome. And you're saying the same thing, which is awesome. So Tamara says, thank you for answering my cat question. And there's one down here from what raw meaty bones do you recommend? I have a Belgian Malinois.
Yeah, Belgian Malinois.
Malinois.
Yeah, so again, with raw meaty bones, if you have access to variety, that would be amazing. So I feed things, so kind of similar, I guess, similar breed. I have a German Shepherd, so he eats whole chickens, he'll eat whole ducks, he'll eat whole rabbits. So I'll include things like that, which you could find whole chickens at your grocery store if you don't have access to a raw food company. I also include things like lamb backs, lamb ribs, goat backs, goat ribs, things like that. Again, I usually will collect some deer from hunters. And so it's anything from deer necks, deer backs, deer ribs, deer legs sometimes. But you want, with raw meaty bones, the main thing is you want to be sure that it's size appropriate for your dog, and that it is raw meaty bones and not bare or devoid of meat. So, for example, my almost 13-year-old Italian Greyhound, she's my gulper. So she has always thought if she's eating her food and if somebody's approaching her, that they are going to take that food away. It's just stuck in her head. That's what she thinks. And so if we go and put our hands close to her food, she's going to try and gulp it. So if I have, say, a bag of different variety of raw meaty bones, she actually gets the biggest chunk. And once she starts working it down, and she's 12 pounds if you're not familiar with Italian Greyhound, so she gets the biggest chunk out of the bunch. So she'll start working on that. And once she starts working it down, I will make a trade with her. So I will find a really good quality treat that she loves. And I know if I put it in front of her face and say, hey, Bella, here's this, she will snatch up that treat, and I pull out the raw meaty bone, and one of my other dogs will finish it. My other two, I don't have really any worries with them. They eat everything really nicely. They don't try and gulp. They don't think everyone's out to get their food like my Italian Greyhound does. So be sure it's size appropriate, especially if you don't know your dog's quirks and things like that, that it's bigger than their mouth or as big as their head, so that they have no choice but to gnaw through that bone. if you have a dog that likes to eat things super fast too, a way to slow them down and teach them to slow down is to feed partially frozen. So that makes things harder to gulp and swallow, and they have no choice but to gnaw and crunch through it. So yeah, lots of different things that you can include. With my German Shepherd, when he was a puppy, since he had puppy teeth, it's much more difficult for those puppy teeth to work through raw meaty bones, especially if, say, it's lamb ribs or something like that. So he would work and tire himself out and then take a nice long nap afterwards. But with him, I found if I wanted something super easy for him to just be able to gnaw through and eat and be just successful in completing the whole thing, raw fish, that really helped him out too. He was able to, those were nice soft bones that he could gnaw through and finish and be all proud of himself. So that's even an option as well. I don't feed fish all that often, but I do include it every now and then. So hopefully that gave you some good things to think about in what kind of raw meaty bones to search out.
And if you have multiple dogs, what different strategies you can use based on what's working. You know, like having the one start on this one and then get a treat and then take it and give it to the other one.
Yeah, I mean, dogs have quirks just like people have quirks. So and they might not all eat their raw meaty bones the same. So I can hand my border collie something this big and she will work and crunch through that little piece before she swallows it. If I handed that to my Italian Greyhound, she'd go, oh, yay, and gulp it. So, which
just devour
our dogs are designed to do things that way. Their jaws are meant to rip and shear meat off of bone and crunch through bone and then immediately swallow. So they don't have that lateral side-to-side motion in their TMJ like omnivores or herbivores have. Their TMJ only moves up and down. So they only have this motion, ripping and shearing, and then swallow. So a lot of times when people go, oh, my dog didn't even chew that, they didn't even enjoy it, but that's how their jaws are designed. It's just for eating in that fashion. So
yeah, I can attest to that from growing up on a farm and watching my mom and my dad get frustrated because the dog got a chicken or a turkey and enjoyed it and it was gone. And
gone in seconds.
It was gone very quickly. So, okay, a couple more questions. This is great, by the way, Dr. Erin. This is awesome. Yeah. So Marty's asking what app. So Marty, this is an app that we developed for making the consumption of all of this great content easier for you. The easiest way to explain it is think of Audible and Netflix in one that houses all of the content from the last 2 summits that we've done, even for the Living Summit as well. But I'll put a link up there, put it in the comments that you can go check it out if you'd like to. And that's just I want to make sure I answered your question on that because you were asking what the app is, which, by the way, when you listen to somebody like Dr. Erin, it's pretty easy to get inspired and think, oh my goodness, I got to go in and start listening to more of this stuff. So we have a paid membership. You can go in and then get access to all the content. But the cool part is that from the app, and Dr. Erin, we hear this through our support desk just for some feedback for you, is that one of your I forget which one it is, but one of your presentations is in the top 10 most shared presentations in our app. Yeah. So when you get it, you can go and listen to it, and then you can, if you think of a friend or a client or a colleague or a family member, you're like, wow, this is really great. Well, right from the app, you can just put in first name, last name, email, and then sends them an email, and then they can listen to it. They have a 48-hour access to watch it. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. But this question from Kathy is, my dog is large, 65 pounds, and raw is cost prohibitive. If I do partial raw along with high quality kibble, what percentage raw must it be to be beneficial? Okay.
So if you're feeding both raw and kibble, I would highly recommend keeping them in separate meals. People that mix raw and kibble, they find a lot of times that their dog gets GI upset mixing the two. So I would definitely encourage you to keep it separate. So if you did one meal kibble, whatever your dog typically eats, and one meal raw, I think that would be the best option if you can't do all raw. So whatever your dog eats, 50-50, one meal kibble, one meal raw. and at least they're getting some fresh nutrients that way in one of their meals. So yeah, I would say if you could do 50-50, that would be great. And I actually, as you were talking, I was looking through some of these comments here, and I saw Marty's comment on I find feeding raw is cheaper than any kibble. So I actually was going to pull up that comment. And then we had a comment on the raw and kibble. And that is very true. I actually find the same. And a lot of my clients who raw feed find the same as well. You might be paying more for food, for the raw food versus kibble, but your vet bills and everything else that you have typically are going to be much less. For example, I have a 13-year-old Italian Greyhound. I have an almost 10-year-old Border Collie and a 2.5-year-old German Shepherd. And they haven't had any health issues that I've had to go to the vet for. And I don't think that is a coincidence. I am all about creating health and being proactive in health. So I would rather pay more money over time for raw food than to have a giant, if you think of it almost like a loan type of thing, like a giant balloon payment in the end of, oh, my dog is crashing with all of these different health issues and I'm having to spend thousands of dollars at the vet. I would rather create a healthy dog in the long run, not have to deal with that towards the end of their lives in their senior years. And I mean, typically they have a higher quality of life in those senior years too. So that's more of what I like to create. And if you have the raw feeding costs and all that, it is kind of a known set amount that you are having to pay out rather than the unknown. What happens to my dog when they lose their health? It's much harder to regain health than to maintain it. So yeah, here comes Barb, way cheaper. I haven't had a vet bill in 3.5 years. And especially dogs with allergies too. There's dogs with just horrible allergies and they're trying all these different kibbles, and typically it's not until they switch over to raw food that they start to see all that clearing up. So, I mean, some of those medications are pretty darn expensive. So I would rather be spending that in raw food, having a happy, healthy dog than paying for a bunch of different medications. So.
Yeah, and it is, it can be, Barb put that kibble's dead food. Exactly. And also for Kathy to acknowledge your concern. I think that I'll just from a business perspective, but from a budget perspective, it can be a catch-22 or a slippery slope where you can, it is at the initial level or the first layer is kind of like, well, it seems that it's a little bit more economical right now because I'm not spending as much of the food. But I use my little gym analogy. It's like people who go to the gym and don't know what they're doing and they have a gym membership and then they don't use it because they don't want to spend money in personal training. Well, they're going to spend a lot longer to get the results that if they just worked with somebody who could help them get the result. And in this instance, I think the challenge, Dr. Erin, is just that sometimes it's just a lot of it is I've been finding myself with us in our own family, with our animals, but also with the people that we've interacted with through the summit has been just the mindset of just so many years and decades of like kibble's healthy and it's good for your dog, for your cats.
They've ingrained it into our brains. So sometimes you just have to get creative. So, for example, when I collect from deer hunters, that's free food.
Right.
So I'm not paying a dime on things that I collect from hunters because they have no use for it. They're happy that it's getting used up by somebody else and it's not ending up in the trash. So we're able to utilize the whole animal. So sometimes reaching out to farmers, butchers, hunters, people like that, you might have to do a little bit more work than buying, say, a raw food that comes in a nice little tub all prepackaged for you. But if you do a little bit of work like that, reaching out for raw food from those types of sources, it can drastically cut down how much you're spending on your raw food. So, of course, if you went to like a pet store, a lot of those raw foods, it's anywhere from maybe $4 a pound to maybe $8 or $9 a pound, which can be tough, definitely for people with larger dogs. But I have, there's a family that I see their dogs, they have 8 giant size breed dogs, and they actually feed raw. And they basically had to get creative with it. They have to drive probably 5 hours to get their food, but they go and they get that food for much less money, and they have the freezer space to store it all. So yeah, sometimes you do have to get creative and see what's out there and around your area, or maybe a little bit outside your area to feed your dogs. So
yeah, because you're either going to pay with time or you're going to pay with money. It just depends what you want to use. So Andrea's question here is, how much a day does a dog need to eat, or a cat? I feel like this could be a pretty vague kind of answer, but can you give some clarity?
Like the amount?
I think, yeah. How much does a day does a dog need to eat, or a cat? I think she's asking the food. Yeah.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb to figure out how much your dog or cat needs to eat a day is to start with 2.5% of their body weight daily. That is a good average for what dogs or cats need. And of course, if they start gaining weight or if they start losing weight, then you can modify from there. So say, for example, say you have a 50-pound dog. Hopefully you could see that. So I'll put in 50 pounds there. And then I'm going to times that by 0.025. And then that equals 1.25 pounds. If we want to change that to ounces, we're going to times that by 16. And that would be 20 ounces a day. So if you feed that in one full meal, that would be 20 ounces in one meal. Or say you feed 2 meals a day, then that would be 10 ounces per meal. So that's typically the calculation for it. And then watch your dog. Are they gaining? Are they losing? Do you need to increase, decrease the amount of ounces? But yeah, that's a good starting point. It's just like, even if you look at processed food, they have a little table on the back. Not every dog fits those tables. So start off with the 2.5% and see where that takes you. If you have a very high energy dog, say they're into lots of different dog sports and things like that, they might need to go more up to 3%. If you have, say, a senior dog, a little bit more sedentary, their daily exercise is a walk around the block, then you might go down to 2%. But usually the 2.5% is a good place to start. So hopefully that makes sense and answers your question.
Yeah, that was great. That was simple and clear. And I just wanted to pull this up. Marty said, the best thing I like about raw-fed dogs and cats is the biodegradable poop.
Yeah.
It actually just disappears.
Marty, you might enjoy this, but I actually have a YouTube video specifically about the poop. And in the video, I basically say I'm going to be stepping in raw-fed dogs' poop and showing the differences in it. So basically, in this video, I'm out at my office, and I deliberately did not clean up a little poop pile from one of my dogs, and I saw a kibble-fed dog's poop close by that I could also share. And I basically said, okay, I'm going to step in this poop. And so I step in it. It just crumbles all back into the earth. And I turn up the bottom of my shoe, and there's nothing on my shoe. So yeah, it's just, again, as nature intended. If you're going for a hike in the woods, you don't see a bunch of poop everywhere. And there certainly are a bunch of animals in the woods living out there. But that's what happens, is they're eating food that they're designed to eat. They're absorbing most of it. So their poop is just, it's very small, and it crumbles right back into the earth. And that tends to be one of the first things that people notice with raw food. And sometimes it's a little alarming or scary to people, saying, all of a sudden my dog's poop looks like little pellets. I go, it's because they're absorbing it. It shouldn't look like soft serve.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, I mean, if you have a Chihuahua that has a super voluminous poop that looks like soft serve, that is not normal. They're not absorbing a lot of their food.
It's all the fillers coming out.
Yeah. I like to say the proof is in the poop. So yeah.
That's good. I thought we were going to get into a poop talk on here, but this is awesome.
I'm sorry if you're eating lunch. I know it's lunchtime in a lot of these time zones.
How do you say sorry, not sorry?
Poop is a daily conversation in my line of work. So
And for us humans, it should be, because if your
Yeah.
bowels are not moving regularly, usually
Yeah.
we find people that are cranky and irritated and aggravated.
Yeah.
Usually, most of my clients, I'm like, how many times are you going to the bathroom? And they're like,
Yeah. A
what
lot
do
of
you mean?
times.
Like, why would you ask me that? They're just constipated. But
Yeah. A lot of times they're full of poop, literally,
yeah,
and
yeah.
that's messing with their health.
And even when they are, some people still remain to be full of poop.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll keep moving
topic.
here. Another topic, another call for another day. Marty, you're welcome about the app. And Lynn says, thank you so much for the great information. This is awesome.
You're welcome.
And I put the link there if you guys want to go check it out. If you're not yet a member, then you can. Which, by the way, we set this up so that it's less than $1 a day to be able to have access to all the, I think there's 140 different presentations, and then you have access to it from the membership site and the app. So if you want to go check it out, go ahead and do that. Jennifer Class from First Class Health, she's one of our members as well. Nice to see you, Jennifer. So maybe she's asking, maybe you answered this already, but what do you do when your cat feces are thick because of feeding raw? His stool hasn't gotten more firm like the others have, so what do I do? Just wondering if it's not actually good for him. So that's interesting.
Yeah, it really probably depends on how long you've been raw feeding and if this cat has had other underlying health issues. So typically, if you haven't fed for very long, say this cat is older, say this cat has some health issues, it's going to take a longer period of time to see those nice changes, but typically you still will get there. So sometimes when I have families where they're wanting to switch over to raw food for a certain dog or cat in their family because they're having health issues, but they decide, okay, what's great for this dog and returning them to health is great for all of my dogs and cats. A lot of times they'll see the other dogs and cats that aren't showing health issues turn over much more quickly. So they have normal stool much more quickly. They have that nicer skin and coat much more quickly. And the dog or cat with the health issues takes a little bit longer just because their body has to go through that healing process. So I would still encourage you to continue with raw and see what changes you get in your cat. And I don't know if you're commenting at all, but if you're able to, if you're still listening.
Yeah, she's still on here, yeah.
Yeah,
oh, she says
she just commented.
And he's been on it for a couple
I don't
months.
know if you could tell us how long you've been feeding raw, Jennifer, but that probably would be.
She said a couple months.
A couple months. Okay. Yeah. So depending on how old this cat is, a lot of times I'll tell people you're going to get some initial turnover in health right away. But typically, for every 1 year that your dog or cat has been on a processed food, allow 1 month for all of those great underlying changes in their body to happen. So if, say, your cat, I'm sorry, say your cat is 8 years old, you might not see all of those nice changes happen until 8 months from now. So I would keep on feeding the raw as that's what their body is designed to eat and utilize, and it promotes health. And I think you'll see the changes happen. So
yeah, that's great. And no, that's great. And she said then as followed up saying, and how do you get your cat that doesn't want to eat raw to eat it? I have several that will eat it, but there's just that one that won't eat it.
Yeah, cats are finicky little creatures.
They are.
They love routine. They don't like change. A big problem with the pet food industry is if they were on kibble before, the kibble industry deliberately will study cats and dogs to see what will make them addicted to their food. They want to create an addict to their processed food. So cats already not liking change, it can certainly be more difficult to switch over. So maybe try including like a little raw piece of food as a treat type of thing. I don't know if they would eat it as a treat. Sometimes you do have to get creative. And I know I mentioned earlier, if you're feeding raw and you're feeding kibble, not to mix them. Sometimes if you're really kind of at your wit's end and trying to just incorporate some raw food, just including a little tidbit of raw food with whatever they normally eat or will readily eat can be helpful because it starts to introduce that little bit of change into their system. So you could try things like that. Sometimes the fact that they're watching all of the other cats eat and enjoy this raw food, it'll eventually kind of turn over in their brains thinking, oh, well, maybe this is good. For example, I have a staff member at my office that has ferrets who also can be very picky about change, where her one ferret took onto it right away. He just loved it. He went straight for the bowl every time she put it out. And the other one, she went up, tried a little nibble, and she gagged like it was the most horrible thing that she ever has tasted. But it took a few months of watching the other ferret eat this raw food, and suddenly she decided it was good. So now she's readily eating just like the other ferret. So cats and ferrets, you do sometimes have to get creative. Maybe try a different protein. You could even try that as well. Sometimes say they'll take to chicken, but they really don't like turkey. So sometimes the leaner proteins it doesn't seem like they're as appetizing, or they're rejected more often than the average fat or higher fat proteins. So that could be something to try as well.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that I've had people who are working at getting lean and losing weight, and they always eat like lean meats and not eating the fatty meats because it thinks that eating fat's going to make them fat, when in reality, it actually gives them more energy stores that their body can utilize, provided that everything else is balanced. But for me, if I eat like white turkey meat or white chicken meat, I don't feel as good as if I eat dark chicken and turkey meat. But it's interesting you sharing that. I always bring that into the conversation because it's stuff that I think makes sense on the human side of like, well, that makes sense. Some people just don't like that food because they're picky or fussy. But then when it comes to our animals, it can be easy to kind of forget that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I see some people commenting things that have worked for them to switch over their cats. So yeah, if you had trouble switching over your cat and you got creative and found a way that works, definitely share it so that other people can have an easier time kind of streamlining that process. Dogs typically go right away. They're all in for the raw, but cats and ferrets definitely can be trickier. So yeah, if you have a good solution that you found, share it. There's lots of great comments coming in.
Yeah, that's awesome for sure. And this 2 last questions. One from Gail was just asking, when you get deer, do you freeze it first for a few weeks, or do you feed it raw and then the stuff that you don't like to avoid it going from getting spoiled, do you then freeze it when you get a deer?
Okay, you were breaking up at the very end and I can't see that question, but yeah, I do freeze it all. So yeah, if you're getting something fresh like that, you want to throw it in your freezer just to be sure. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, if I see anything seems off with any meat, which so far I haven't found any of that with any of the deer that I've picked from hunters. It all just looks like beautiful, healthy meat. I would toss it. So yeah, any weird smells, weird textures, things like that, toss it. But yeah, once I portion everything out, I go ahead and put it in my chest freezer and it stays in there. Typically for, I would say most of it stays a week or more. Some of it, my dogs get really excited about the deer and they're waiting at the freezer and pawing at the freezer. So they know the deer's in the freezer. So sometimes I'll just freeze for a few days, especially if I've really inspected the meat and it looks healthy. What do I think about feeding pork?
Yeah.
Okay. So that probably is along the same lines. I'm guessing Chris is probably thinking about parasites in pork because years ago that was coming up. Pork, as long as you are sourcing from a high quality place, you shouldn't have any issues parasite wise with feeding it, especially if they're using human grade standards, things like that. There shouldn't be any issues. I feed pork all the time. My dogs love pork. So yeah, I feed raw bones that are pork, and I even feed boar. So
yeah, it's a great question because it never, when you had mentioned about like the deer, like all the different kind of sources that didn't come up at all. And I thought I was going to ask that, but then it went in one ear and out the other for me for the thought. This last question, this is amazing. And I know that we should wrap up because you probably have to keep going on with your day. But Erlene was asking, can you post your formula to determine the amount of food a dog needs each day, please? Because I think he or she found that very helpful.
Yep, I can go to the comments after this is done and put a comment in how to do that.
Cool. Awesome. So I always like to ask this at the end of our calls, and when we do these live weekly coaching calls, do you, not like you haven't already dropped tons of knowledge and wisdom for people, it's been great, but do you have anything else that you want to kind of leave people with as to kind of like your closing words of wisdom?
Closing words of wisdom. Well, I think we covered a lot. I mean, nutrition is definitely the foundation of health. And we basically, most of this call, we discussed nutrition. My other focus is, of course, animal chiropractic. But you really do need that good foundation for everything else. So you can't out-medicate a bad diet. You can't out-supplement a bad diet. You can't out-exercise a bad diet. If you have a bad diet, then eventually health is going to fail. So I would definitely encourage people listening to this call to find out more information about raw food if you're not already raw feeding. It really does make a huge difference in your pet's health. And that's how I got into all of this. When I first became an animal chiropractor, I thought, well, people are going to be asking me about food, so I really need to figure out which kibble is the best to feed for my patients. Which one should I recommend? And I started getting on and researching, and the more I researched kibble, the more I wanted to stay away from it. So I found out all the truths of the pet food industry, and I thought, I do not want to touch that. I do not want to give this to my dogs at all. So then I started looking into raw food, and I'm going, wow, this is it's creating health. It's what they're designed to eat. This has to be the answer. And that also rang true when I started my practice, and I saw raw fed dogs coming in, and they were all just so healthy. And I saw kibble fed dogs coming in, and they had allergies, and they had autoimmune stuff, and they had goop coming out of their eyes. They had flakes coming out of their skin. They just would have more of a laundry list of problems compared to those raw-fed dogs. So it really does make a huge difference. So I would really encourage the least processed you could do, the better. Your dog or cat is going to have a more quality life in the long run, and you're going to enjoy them for a longer period of time in your life too. So yeah, it's both sides of things.
For sure. And that reminds me, my 2 cents of humble wisdom here is that an ounce of prevention is worth more than a pound of cure. And I think that is worth a lot. Like with Kathy, if you're still listening, just to take that encouragement, find the best that you can and do a little challenge, right? I've done this in my own holistic health studies where the best advice I was given, one of the best advice I was given from this one guy, Paul Check, he's like, he'd give a presentation, like, now don't believe anything I just told you. Go out and try it for yourself. And then know from personal experience, right? Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Erin. I really appreciate it. And I put your website on there. So guys, if you are interested in talking to or consulting with Dr. Erin, I wanted to ask you this earlier. Do you do like Zoom or phone consultations? If people want to consult with you, do you do that? Or are you so busy in your practice that you can't?
I usually do phone or Skype. So either of those options. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And they can find that information on drerinoconnor.com.
Yeah, yep. It's all, that's my little hub to everything. So whether you're interested in raw food or animal chiropractic, it's all there. Just click on through and find what you're looking for.
Yeah, and I realized that we didn't even talk. We were going to talk about animal. I was going to do like half this and then half the chiropractic part. But we'll do that again.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of really great info though on raw feeding, and go for it. Go raw.
Everybody, Angela, nice to see you on here, Angela. And Barb saying great call. Yes, and Kathy was listening, so good on you. Jennifer says thank you, and Marty says thank you. Everybody's just saying this is awesome. So thank you. All right, well, we'll let you go, Dr. Erin. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And if you guys are not a member yet, then if you want to consider that, that'd be great. We'd love to take you in our paid community. We also do a lot of this stuff for free. And we appreciate it with Dr. Erin sharing her time, because it's she wasn't sitting there twiddling her thumbs looking for something to do. So we're thankful for that. And, you know, we do this whole summit exists because we want to inspire and empower and educate and to continue to share all of the great wisdom that's being presented here. And the summit is scheduled for later this fall. If you just go to the link, I'll put a link to it that you can pre-register for 2019 if you want to now, but you can wait till later. So we're doing the summit again if some of you are listening that haven't participated before. And with that being said, we'll let you go and we'll wrap things up and we'll see you next week for our next great call. And again, thank you, Dr. Erin. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Okay. See you, everybody. Okay. Bye-bye.